Hi, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today is our live interview with Sarah from Alberta Girl Acres. So I'm just going to add her in. Hi, Sarah. How's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Good. I'm always so nervous when we're doing a live interview how the connection's going to go. And then the person connects in, and I just feel this great surge of relief always when it happens.
Well, this is my
Are you
first.
having a good day?
Yeah, I'm absolutely, yeah. And this is actually my first interview through the IGTV. So I was also like, I don't know, I'll just keep it
No.
on and click it when I see it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, 10 out of 10 so far on everything that you've had to do.
Cool.
For those of you that are just joining in, and if you don't know Sarah, Sarah is the owner and operator of Alberta Girl Acres, which is a small scale flower farm in the Alberta Prairies. She grows cut blooms, specializes in both fresh and dried cut flowers, and runs seasonal workshops. So Sarah's pretty busy. She's also the author of the book Don't Panic, a business guide to small scale cut flower farming, and hosts business classes as well as consultations focused on essentials in marketing and gardening. So Sarah has a lot of information to share with us. If you have questions as we go through the interview, feel free to ask them. The more the merrier. Sarah is here and happy to answer anything you have to ask. So Sarah, since I have lots of questions for you, I thought we would jump right into it. So when I was researching you, one of the things that I was sort of surprised to see was that you have had an experience in stand-up comedy as well as working with sort of marginalized groups in the arts community. So two really unique things. How have you gone from that, sort of what trajectory have you taken to running your own sustainable flower business today?
Yeah, that I mean, it's quite a journey. It was there was I guess in my experience before working with the arts and yeah, the arts communities overall, they are really diverse communities. There's a lot going on in those circles, and I like my personal background. My dad is Egyptian born. He immigrated into Canada when he was a teenager, and super dark skin, dark hair. Half my siblings have dark skin. So I have this like sort of. I was raised in a family that we were treated like immigrants, and there was a lot of for sure, lots of racism and lots of being kind of treated differently as a family, a mixed race family. So kind of stepping from that and then coming into the arts communities, and really those communities they embrace difference, they embrace diversity, and that was just always sort of my mandate. Like my core personal mandate was like I was just always drawn to communities that were inclusive and sort of open and like friendly and just like, you're different, that's not a problem, cool, come on in. So then when I eventually decided to take on this farm, or I take on the dream, I guess, of it, um it was just really important to maintain all of those personal values. My farm is it's run by me. I'm a woman, and that's my background. So I really want it to be an inclusive place, as inclusive as it can be, because it's, I grow on like an acre, and I don't have a budget for a lot of staff, but I really want people from all walks to feel like this is a place they can come and feel comfortable. Everyone who's worked out here, with the exception of a guy I was seeing for a couple of years at the beginning there, has been a woman, or has been non-binary, or has been a very femme forward sort of person. And I use the word femme, the way I use that word is that it's an inclusive term. It's not just women, it's not just females, but it's just people who are femme-centered, who are out there trying to make space for femmes. So yeah, I mean, it's certainly not an exclusive. I don't try to create an exclusive setup where, you know, men are excluded specifically at all. But just because of the way I operate and the way and kind of like the friends I have and the circles I'm a part of, a lot of the people who come through, they're femme forward. That's just kind of how it ends up working. I was really intentional too about keeping the word girl in my business name. I really wanted that to be like, you know, this is a femme operated business, and yeah, just to kind of signify that that's what I'm about.
Yeah. Honestly, is that ever neat? And then with the stand-up comedy, so I know in a lot of your Instagram posts, some of them are quite funny, the descriptions that you write. Is that, do you think, from your stand-up comedy, or?
Yeah, well, I would say the one way that it plays in is that I really feel comfortable. I feel comfortable in front of a crowd for the most part.
Yeah.
So like with the funniness part, my family was also very funny. My brothers were hilarious, and my sisters too. And like we just, our whole language is just about like one-upping and obscure references, and like that's just how, when we're all together, it's just a giggle fest, which is really fun. So when I decided to do stand-up comedy, I was just sort of trying to prove to myself that I was actually funny. Like it was just sort of like a personal thing of like, I need to get up there and make a few audiences laugh, and then it's like, cool, got it. Like I'm funny, I got it. That's all I need. And it was a lot of fun to do that. But like I would say that now that I'm out here, one of the reasons I came out to a farm and finally decided to make the switch was I was kind of overwhelming myself with being available to a public and being available to audiences. There was, I kind of developed a following, a modest following, and just feeling like you have to be on all the time was getting really overwhelming. And especially, you know, as I would go out and date, like any guy specifically who finds out that I do comedy, that's just it. Like the conversation is just done because all they want to talk about is jokes and comedians and like all this stuff. So coming out to the farm, I was like, all right, I think I've like done that. I'm good. And I think any funniness that now comes through in my writing or anything like that, that's just sort of me. But yeah, the way that it actually really did benefit that experience doing stand-up comedy is, yeah, when I'm doing workshops or when I'm speaking at a conference or anything like that, the stage is very comfortable for me. I still get nerves and stuff, but I just kind of know how to manage them, how to, you know, direct them so that it's sort of like a harnessing the energy of the nerves and turning them into something fun instead of freaking out. So
yeah. Honestly, is that ever cool? When I read that you'd done stand-up comedy, I just thought, like, that is so ballsy, you know, just sort of, because you're putting yourself out there. You don't know what response you're going to get. And you're just like, you're really just going for it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think you can see that kind of attitude is in so many pieces of your business, or the way you've, you know, sort of structured things, is you're giving it a try and seeing how it goes, right?
Yeah, and to speak to that, another thing that stand-up comedy really taught me was that failure, you fail when you're on a stage, and when you're performing jokes especially, that failure is extremely visceral. If a joke doesn't land, you know it, and you have to sit there and like, you have to sit in that failure to the point where if you do it enough times, failure just washes over. It doesn't even matter anymore. Like it doesn't. To me, the word failure or the concept of failure, it's dissolved. It doesn't exist in the way I see the world anymore.
Yeah.
So going forward into something like this, things that don't work out, they don't compute as failure anymore. It's just sort of like, well, you know, that didn't work. I still got to finish up. So like, might as well just like commit and, you know, continue on. So yeah, I guess that was another big part of like the way it plays into this business. It's just fear of failure evaporated. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because I feel like societally there's this idea of almost being afraid to try things, with failure being like the punishment or the outcome that's like not acceptable. You know what I mean? Like a person's sort of encouraged to stay safe in the things that they attempt doing in their life, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's a shame because failure is not the worst thing. It's not.
No.
It's okay. Failure, it's okay. You get through it. I have failed so many times since being out here. I started a second business like in my second year of operations, a collaborative, flower market that I was super excited about, and I had put a ton of work into. I'd written the business plan. I'd done everything for it, and the location was wrong, and things just kind of like didn't come together that summer. And I had to cut my losses, and was just like, all right, like that's it. And that was a huge blow. That was a huge blow in every way, financially, in terms of like how I wanted to like be functioning within the community. It was a huge blow, but what are you gonna do? Like, just get back up. Like, that's kind of all there is to it. Just get back up, keep going.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Speaking of that being a financial blow, so you became a profitable business in your third year of operation. Is that right?
Yeah, the first year, so if I count it in years, the first year was really just getting the business set up. I wasn't growing quite yet. It started, I registered everything in 2017 and then really launched everything 2018. So our first year of profits was 2019. So kind of third-ish, second-ish sort of year.
Yeah. Was there ever, so I imagine like 2 years could go or 3 years could go really quick or really slow. Was there a moment when you were sort of waiting for profit that you were like, am I going to make this? Like, how am I going to make it? Like, what sort of kept you going to push to that point?
Well, I had written and rewritten my business plan before starting. So in that first year, I wrote out the plan and acknowledged where those gaps in the cash flow would be. I knew in that first year I wasn't going to make a profit. I knew I wasn't. I had hoped that maybe, in some like miracle scenario I would, but the odds were, vastly against me. And with any small business, whether it's farming or a cafe or a restaurant, turning a profit in that first year it's not going to happen unless you have like super rich parents that are like, I'm buying everything, But yeah, so that first year I kind of had planned for those gaps. The second year was scarier because generally my cash flow, like if I'm relying more heavily on flowers, which I was more in the first couple of years, just relying on the revenue from cut flowers, that cash flow doesn't really pick up until July, like especially in the first couple of years where you don't have capital from the previous year to work back into the business. So it was super scary. June's coming around, the flowers are really slow. Even by mid-July, the flowers are, we have a short growing season. It's Alberta, so we're not really seeing. I didn't have perennials established. I was still building up my bulbs, my fall bulbs and stuff, tulips and everything. So yeah, it was super tricky, and it was definitely scary, but it sure felt good at the end of that year when we did the books and we're like, whoa, we actually came out in the green. Like, not by tons, that the first time that we turned a profit, it was only about 5,000 and it went right back into the business the next year. But and when I talk about it, I say, and we doubled it the next year, but the fact is we actually quadrupled that profit the next year, turning it into 20,000. And going on, it's kind of set. Those margins are just sort of set to continue growing as the flowers get more established, as our streams, our revenue streams. I say when I'm really just like talking about me, my kids, and my chickens. Like, I say about But as the streams diversify, and as I really key into what I enjoy and what works for me, I don't want to stretch myself too thin. It's really about working smarter, not harder. All of those pieces. And you just get better at it. Like, you get better at the processes, you get better at, the bouquet making and the workshops, and you just get better at it. You turn into kind of like a well-oiled machine as you're going. So that helps a lot. And that you only get there if you stick to it. You know, those first couple of years feel so hard and so they're so hard. They're so scary. It felt like being in an ocean, being a brand new sea captain that had no idea how to how to sail a
Yeah.
ship,
Yeah.
and just storms, and like, is my boat gonna sink? I don't even know. Like, I can't tell what's on the other side of this, but just kind of like hold the course, yeah. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh my God, I survived, and we built all of this in the meantime. It's
Yeah.
really.
One of the things you talk about building with your business and sort of one of the key values with it is that it's an ethical alternative to imported flowers. I was reading. So one thing I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure this is the case for many of us, was that ethics are implicated in the purchasing of flowers. So can you sort of just give a brief rundown of why ethics are involved in flowers and how your business as it grows is creating this ethical or sustainable alternative?
For sure. I'll try to keep it brief. It's a big topic. So, but I think the first place to start is to acknowledge that flowers are an agricultural product, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're an agricultural product, and with any agricultural industry, the larger the scale, the more potential and likelihood there is for exploitation and environmental damage. That's with any agricultural,
Mm-hmm.
well, with any industry really, but
Yeah.
agriculture especially, because agriculture is so closely um, tuned into the soil and waterways and evaporation, all of those things. The way that we alter the land has a direct impact on the
Yeah.
land. So starting there, any with larger scale flowers, industrial operations, most of them are, set up in places with longer growing seasons. So a lot of South American operations. Certainly, there's a lot of flower farms in the U.S., but I feel like small scale or local kind of scale is really getting a stronger foothold down there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There are billions and billions of dollars worth of flowers being shipped around the globe at any time. So you have, shipping emissions from shipping,
Mm-hmm.
lots of transport fuel used in shipping flowers around, and the time span it takes to get flowers from here to there. You then have to use a lot of holding solutions and a lot of refrigeration, and all of those processes then have an impact as well on the billion scale, right? So
Yeah.
we're not just talking like a couple of thousands of dollars worth of flowers here and there, but we're talking on the billion scale. So yeah, there's the emissions. There are the there in the large industrial scale operations. There's standardized practices that involve tons of pesticides and herbicides for weeds to prep a plot or something like that, and fungicides and nematicides, and I've made a few notes, plant growth regulators, and a lot of those and this is easy to find evidence of. There are studies and lots of stuff out there. A lot of those chemicals are washed into waterways, and those waterways are then polluted, and yeah, it has a really significant impact on the environment surrounding those operations. So there's that. And then there are, issues around exploitation. So labor laws are typically a little more lax in certain areas, especially on an industrial scale. So we're also talking about the scale of these things that makes the biggest difference. So, a lot of the workers in these areas, making maybe $2 a day or less, the labor laws aren't really in place to protect the labor force. So large percentage of women working in these operations, and it's pretty nasty. It's pretty nasty, the things that they have to endure or go through if they want to take a few days off. There are some really unsavory trades that need to be made for them to be able to take that time. So, and again, all of that's out there. If you were to just kind of like start Googling, are cut flowers ethical? This stuff comes up, and it's not, it's a UK issue, it's a US issue, it's a South American issue. It's really kind of the impact of the flower industry, the floral industry, it's a huge agricultural industry, and there is an impact, and it's pretty severe. Like, for example, and then there's the waste on top of it, the plastics used and the floral foam used and all of these things that are just, for example, in 2007, Australia imported 5.22 million roses from Kenya for Valentine's Day. So this is a one-day thing.
Yeah.
They were all wrapped in plastic. That included approximately 163 kilometers worth of plastic wrapping just for roses, just in Australia, just for Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So if you look at that on more of a global scale, on a day-to-day scale, that's a lot of plastic. That is thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers worth of plastic that is just going into flowers, just to wrap, you know. And then there's the floral foam element too. It's not biodegradable. It doesn't break down. It's really damaging for the environment. So again, on a billion scale, there's bad impact there.
Yeah.
And what with the smaller scale flower farms, a lot of us we're looking for, we're getting into it for sustainability. That's the mandate as we step into it. I want something that's sustainable for me, that benefits my community, that's, you know, building a local industry that is a little gentler on you know, the environment and on exploitation issues and all the rest. I don't exploit anybody out here. Most people that come out are very, you know, happy with the experience. So, but yeah, that's as brief as I can be about it. There's really, it's such a mother load of issues. But yeah, that's kind of the mandate for my farm and for a lot of other small scale growers, is to really offer the alternative. They're seasonal. We don't have peonies in November. We don't have daffodils in November. You know, we're not going to have asters in spring, but it's seasonal. And I feel like really latching onto the idea of seasonality, it tunes you into the seasons. It tunes you into your landscape. It tunes you into like your general region in such a way that every flower or bouquet or mix or arrangement that you're getting throughout that season, you're seeing the landscape reflected in that bouquet. Yeah. You know, you're seeing spring reflected there. You're seeing it, it's just way more tuned in. Anyway, yeah.
I think that's so cool, because I feel like flowers themselves are supposed to be like this beautiful like gift you're like sharing with people. And ideally, you know, that wouldn't just encompass like the gift itself, but like the whole like lifespan of the flower, or all the things that it's been through, you know, sort of keeping the intention with like the actual production of it kind of thing. Yeah. So.
And I think a lot of people think through those processes when it comes to food. You know, there's local food movement, organic food movement, sustainable food movements. And for some reason, it's only just clicking that flowers are grown. Flowers are farmed too, you know, and where are all these flowers coming from? So it's neat that people are really keying into it. That part's really fantastic. The demand for local flowers is massive. So it's a good business to be in for sure.
Yeah, I know. I'm pretty excited to see all the flowers you have coming like this summer and that, or this spring. I feel so much anticipation for it, you know.
Me too.
It's anticipation all around. For people that want to be growing some of their own flowers or get started just a little bit and they live in Alberta, do you have sort of 3 types you'd recommend that would be a good base to begin with, and how they would get those basically from seed to successful plant, I guess is the goal?
Definitely. I'd say, like, in terms of like 3 staples, you got to have sweet peas. The reward of sweet peas are just so satisfying. The scent is incredible. Whenever I'm growing them, I can't not walk past my sweet peas and just stick my face right in them and like take a deep breath. They're just the best. So with sweet peas, they're you can start them and grow them pretty much like any other kind of pea. They're very they like the deep cold. They like a cold, moist start. So as soon as you can get into the ground, you can push them into the cold, wet soil, and they'll kind of do their thing. If you want to start them inside, I've just kind of like put them in a glass of water, let them soak for honestly, I've forgotten about some for a couple of days and they were fine.
Yeah.
You want like a good like 12 to 24 hours of them soaking. If you leave them for longer, they'll just start sprouting. That's kind of what they'll do. And then once they've had a good soak, you know, you've got I use growing medium, and I just moisten it until it's like feels like brownie batter. Put it in my trays and then put the seeds in there. I put them under lights if I'm growing them indoors. I keep the lights close. That's something that a lot of people kind of miss. If you're growing with lights, the lights have to be right there. And I use fluorescent bulbs, one cool, one warm, or LED lights. To get the seed started, any light, as long as it's bright, will work to get the seed going. But if you want the plant to grow and thrive, then you need the broader spectrum of light for them to really thrive. So, but if you're starting them outdoors, you get them in that really wet, moist soil. Squirrels and mice do enjoy sweet pea seeds, or in the early spring, they're kind of desperate for anything, so they'll go for them. So, you know, I just overplant for that. Like if I'm planting correctly, I just put a whole bunch in there. And then you'll see them pop up. They need trellising, so you want to make sure that you're kind of tying them up as they go. Yeah. And then you'll start seeing blooms usually by like July-ish. The best thing in the world. Last spring, my daughter was like on a school like video call, and I didn't know, and I had the first sweet pea of the season, and I like burst into her room, was like, first sweet pea of the season, smell it, smell it, smell it. And she's like, Mom, I'm on a call. It's like, first sweet pea. Anyway, yeah. So they're fantastic. I love them so much, and they're great in the vase too.
Yeah. One person asked, do you need to soak them before they go outside?
It depends on when you're putting them outside. So if you're getting them out right in the very early spring when the ground is super mucky and super wet, and you're expecting more precipitation, which would be wonderful out here. We're so dry out here. But if you get regular rain, then the seeds are kind of okay. But if you want to give them a jump start, give them a good soak beforehand, and you'll probably cut like, you know, anywhere from a few days to a week off of their when they actually start. So soaking, they do like the soak, and they like coolness. If you're ever starting in seeds indoors, don't use heat mats. Most seeds like things on the cooler side for starting indoors. And then for the other two, I love recommending Cosmos. They're a really easy flower to grow. They're not picky about soil. They'll grow kind of on a gravelly kind of side spot next to a driveway or something like that, as long as the soil is workable and there's good drainage. But in terms of the quality of the soil, they're not really picky. And those can be direct sown or started inside. Same thing, moist growing medium, lights close, and they'll get going. If you're direct seeding them outside, just, you know, my rule for planting seeds, and this is something I made up and it works, is only ever plant a seed as deep as it is tall. So if you've got, you know, something like a pumpkin seed that's bigger, you're going to want it a little deeper. If you've got something like a sweet pea, then it's going to be, you know, maybe like a fingernail or so deep. But for something like a Cosmos seed or any super teeny seed, poppy seeds, they have to be on the surface. So just kind of keep that rule in mind. So with a Cosmos seed, you want it just sort of like gently, lightly covered. Keep the soil evenly moist. And you wouldn't want to plant with anything that I plant direct. So this is tricky because everyone has different growing zones and all the rest of it. But my grandma's rule was always put your seeds in the ground when the leaves on the trees are as big as a mouse's ear. So wherever you're at in May, usually it's the week before the frost, or sometimes it's 2 weeks before the frost. That's when I put most of my seeds in the ground. I do keep an eye if they sprout, if the soil is really warm and they sprout earlier, and the frost is still approaching, you might want to like add some extra protection. So with Cosmos seeds, you're going to put them in the ground usually about a week before the expected frost. Up they pop. Once they're about this tall, give them a pinch down to like their first thing, and they'll fill out. And then you've got a beautiful feathery bushel of Cosmos, which are just so fun. They're such a wonderful cottage garden sort of flower. They're very wind resistant as well, and they have some issues with aphids, but you know, what doesn't? I mean, there are plants that don't, but you just have to. Same with any kind of garden. You just keep an eye out for those sorts of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I really love are dahlias. And a lot of people in these northern climates, gardeners specifically, and if you've got issues with your back or your knees, then a lot of gardeners will avoid dahlias because the tubers need to be dug up in the fall, stored all winter, and then replanted in the spring. But you can work around that by starting them from seed. So dahlia seeds are my favorite thing in the world. You can buy them from, I usually get them from, well, now I get them from Geo Seeds, which is it's like a wholesale seed place for businesses. But Swallowtail Garden Seeds, they're California based, I think. That's where I've gotten them in the past. Really good quality. And I believe Stems Flower Farm in Ontario also sells dahlia seeds. And I think Florette Farm maybe just started selling dahlia seeds too. But there's a few different places to get them. And they're the same as any other seed. You can start them inside under lights early on, usually about 4 to 6 weeks before the frost, or maybe more like 8 weeks. I always push it earlier because I'm impatient.
Yeah.
Or you can just put them in the ground, same thing, just kind of about a week before the frost date. You don't want them sprouting up because dahlias are quite tender, so you don't want them coming up before the frost date. But just sort of time it, give them about a week or so to germinate and pop up. And then you've got, they will bloom in the first year. They'll develop little tubers. So the thing about dahlia seeds, and what I find really fun about them, is that it's a mix. You can't, you don't know what you're going to get. It could be anything, any color, but you can, get the showpiece mixes. So they're going to be the big fancy ones at least. But if you like one specifically, and every single dahlia that comes from seed is unique. So you can name it whatever you want. You can be like, that's my grandma's dahlia. That's my sister's dahlia, whatever.
Yeah.
If you want to keep that dahlia, you can dig up that one tuber of that dahlia you grew from seed, save it over the winter. I pack mine in wood chips and keep them in a drafty place in my house. And then replant it. You'll get the exact same dahlia the next year. Or you can just save the seeds from them and have another random bunch, or just let the tubers rot in the ground, which is really good for the soil. You're building up organic matter in the soil. It's good for the the ecosystem down there. And then just start them from seed again the next year. They're so easy and they're so gorgeous. They're just so much fun. So yeah, I would say sweet peas, cosmos, dahlias, they're well worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like you could get some pretty good like flowers and like experience just from planting those three.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're all a little bit different. Their needs are all just a tiny bit different. So you can play around with, with sweet peas, you've got your soaking and your stratification. It's like a toe into this whole stratification world. With cosmos, you've got something that's really tough and hardy, and you can kind of rely on them as long as the drainage is good. So they don't like to be wet, soggy feet or anything like that. But as long as they've got good drainage, you've got a nice, easy flower that's going to be really filling up your garden in the summer. And they're wind resistant. I love them, and they're heat tolerant generally. And then the dahlias, so you can experiment with, they're just so fun. You can experiment with saving the tubers, saving seeds. You can experiment with propagation. Dahlias are so easy to propagate from cuttings. So you can just take a snip as it's growing, and you can pick up rooting powder from any kind of garden center, dip it in the powder, put it in some moist medium, and then you've got 2 plants instead of just one. So yeah, I think they're really, if you want to get into, if you're a hobby gardener that just wants to step it up a bit, then those are great flowers. Yeah.
So with the dahlia, so how do you snip it and then you root it? What part do you snip of it?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways of doing this. So if you had, let me think, if you were starting them from seed, you probably wouldn't have quite enough time to propagate them. The plant has to have a couple branches off of it.
Yeah.
You need you don't want, I've tried to propagate just like 3 leaves.
Yeah.
Just to see what would happen. And the plant survived, it lived, but it did not turn into anything else. It stayed in the garden as these 3 leaves that didn't grow into a plant.
Yeah.
So you want kind of a main shoot. And so the way I propagate is I get my tubers. I only save about 20 tubers per fall. Like I tried to do the whole 300 tuber thing. Too much work, way too much. So I kind of pick my favorite ones, save those tubers, and then pot them up. I recently just potted some up. And then as soon as they start sending up those shoots, I let in the pot, I've got the tubers sticking out of the soil about this high. and then it touches out a little shoot. And as soon as the shoot's about that high, I just snip it off, you know, the base of the stem, dip it in the powder, and I've got some moist rooting, growing medium just ready to go. So it's just, you just snip it off, dip it in the powder, and just put it into the medium, and then just make sure it stays moist, and it'll start developing its own roots. So if you've got like even one tuber early on in the season, if you've got one tuber in like March, you can get it potted up and just like propagate plants right up until, you know, May, until it's time to put them all out at the end of May. So you could end up having one tuber, but having 10 plants from that one tuber.
Yeah.
Garden full of these gorgeous dahlias. And then at the end of that, rather than digging up all those tubers, you can just pick your favorite, dig that one tuber up, save it, you know, and do the same thing the next year. Just propagate a bunch more plants off of that one little tuber.
Yeah. Do you have a root medium that you recommend for people that are looking to do stuff like that?
They're all pretty much the same. I got mine from a place in Calgary called the Professional Gardener. They're big, like mine is like a kind of, because they're for like kind of greenhouse operations and stuff. So mine's kind of this tub. There's 3 different ones you can get. One's for hardwood cuttings, one's for softwood cuttings, and one's for tenders. So, but pretty much when I've seen them in garden centers, it's usually something that's meant for like either softwood to tenders. Like it's kind of all size fits sort of thing.
Yeah, so you can't really go wrong then.
Yeah, totally. I would like still read the label and everything, but like,
so you grow primarily flowers now, but in one of your older Instagram posts, it said that one of the first things you potentially planned on growing was garlic. So what changed with growing garlic, and what other changes have you sort of had happen over the last couple of years?
Yeah, there's been a few for sure. The first business plan I wrote was garlic and eggs. Those were the things I wanted to specialize in. Yeah. Garlic, I still think garlic is a really smart crop. The main reason was because I sort of saw flowers off to the side. Those are really pretty. Like, and at the time, no one in my area had done flowers really yet, that I knew of. I couldn't find anyone in the area who was specializing in cut flowers. So there was a niche element to the flowers there too. With the garlic, there were some really wonderful established garlic farms in southern Alberta already, and just starting out brand new, I was like, well, do I want to start? I don't believe in competition anymore at all when it comes to these sorts of farms, but I was still so fresh to it. I was brand new at like putting this business together. So competition was on my mind in terms of like, I don't want to compete with the established places, you know. And I just saw a lot more flexibility with flowers. They're so adaptable. You can do so much with flowers. Like you can braid garlic, and there's all kinds of like really sweet kind of, you know, crafts and processing, and there's lots you can do with garlic for sure. But flowers were just sexier, I guess. Like that's kind of
the appeal was too much.
Yeah, totally. They were just they really caught the eye. And that was something, I come from like kind of a communications marketing background too, and that eye-catching element in terms of being able to market a product, in terms of being able to like find an audience for a product. Flowers do it. Like flowers are it. There's so much emotional value and sentiment, you know, all of those things with flowers that I really appreciate with them. But I know that that's one of the reasons they resonate so strongly with audiences is everyone has a story behind flowers. Like flowers have impacted everybody in some way or another, whether, you know, they're there for every major event in our lives. It's flowers are sort of there to help us celebrate. Maybe people have had weddings where the main centerpiece was just garlic. That could.
You never know.
You never know. But in terms of arranging and being able to just like market them in different ways, flowers really did it for me. And then, you know, eggs were the overhead for doing eggs on a larger scale. It was too much, and I didn't want to have a commercial egg operation that just gets so dirty. And I have chickens, and I do sell eggs in the summer, but they're just a bunch of goofs that wander around the backyard. Like there's nothing really, you know, there's no like standardized processes with those. They just hang out and lay their eggs. And then I went into, I got really excited about sour cherries, about hardy cherries out here.
Mm-hmm.
Hardy cherries do really well in southern Alberta, and the University of Saskatoon several years back, developed the Romance series, which are just this fantastic new line of hardy cherries. But they take 5 to 6 years to get established, and they need a lot of irrigation to get going. And those pieces I did start a small archer of hardy cherries in my field. They're all still about this tall. This is the year 3, and they're still there. I have to move them to a better spot. But just the time it would take them to establish. And I still would love to have, like, man, if I had an orchard of sour cherries, there's so many things I could do with them. But actually, since then, I found out that you could grow cherries and make more in terms of a profit from the blossoms than the actual cherries.
Oh, really?
Yeah, totally. If you honed in on, like, the niche of just selling the blossoms, cut them at the right time, market them to florists and people who want to play with flowers, you can actually make a better profit from the blossoms. So
that is crazy. Who would have thought, eh?
I know. It's funny how, flowers are they're a great small scale crop. And then as things moved along, once I honed in on flowers, when you're starting, you assume that your main market is going to be florists and weddings, and that kind of dissolved pretty quickly after the first year. As a small scale grower, wholesale prices don't make sense for me. I just can't sell enough flowers at wholesale prices to make a reasonable profit or a sustainable profit. So there are certainly florists, Bloom Diggity in Lethbridge. She's been, Chelsea down there has been a wonderful support. And there's some other florists that will buy stuff from me here and there. But I only alter the prices if it's like a large order. So if their order reaches a certain point, then it's like, cool, 15% off, because that's a lot, that's the only time I really alter my prices for any kind of wholesale or anything like that. And then weddings were just, I don't want to be a florist. That's kind of, for me, I'd rather be growing. I love the workshops. I love inviting people to the farm, letting them have the experience, play with the flowers themselves, pick out what they want, and just really explore their own creativity. That's what I have a lot of fun with. I don't like custom orders, the customer service element. Like, hats off to florists, because the customer service labor that goes into floristry there's like flowers, and then there's customer service. Like, it's so much. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and I'm a farmer now and I don't have those things really. So I try to keep all my processes as not necessarily automated, but as streamlined and smooth as possible. And anything that's customized I like a line that goes from here to here, and customization is like boop, 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 boop. So I can't do it. So rather than doing wedding flowers, I just do bulk buckets, and they order them according to a color palette, rather than specific flowers. I really, really nail in the idea of seasonality. I can't guarantee specific flowers. Like, I'm just very clear. And I have a mutual respect policy. So it's like, if you want to have a hissy fit or a tantrum or whatever, cool, I'm out. Like, that's for me. So anything customized kind of fell off the business plan after the first year. And then I also wanted to host weddings. I have a big building on my farm that would be a beautiful venue if I was to invest in it. But I live right here, and I don't know if it's really well suited, if I personally am well suited to having large groups, especially when there's alcohol involved and stuff like that on my property. So that kind of fell off too. But, I like the reason I love this business so much, and coming from an artistic background or I'm a restless creative sort of person, is that every year I can kind of adjust it and be like, okay, well, that worked really well. I really didn't like that last year, but why don't I try this? It's like, I just feel like there's so much potential to just keep tweaking and, adding this new fun thing in. And if it's like, well, that's was really fun, but it took up like all of my energy that year. So maybe not really worth it, you know. And eventually I'll have a partner out here. We would assume that eventually someone will come out here and wanna do this with me. We'll see. I don't know, but then our capacity obviously will go up a little bit more too, assuming they like to weed. That's the main thing. Yeah,
weeding is the primary requirement.
Yeah, they gotta like to weed. That's really it. Yeah.
Do you have sort of, I know this wasn't one of the questions I had sent you, but looking at sort of all the change you've had, do you have any inkling of how you think you might be growing in the future, or new things that you anticipate are going to happen?
I think so. Like I started this cut garden club, this in January. And that was really just sort of a way to consolidate a lot of questions I would get. There's a lot of new growers in the area. With the COVID restrictions and everything, I used to do growing workshops where people would come out to the farm. We'd talk about gardening and how to do this and that. But with that being kind of uncertain still, rather than planning those workshops and then having to cancel them, I thought, well, what if I kind of, consolidate all this information, and what if I'm able to distribute it to a wider base through doing it online. I'd love to move more into online workshops and that sort of thing with arrangements. I'd love to distribute arrangement kits. I don't have the processes in place yet to be able to distribute fresh flowers in that way. But I would love to get to that point where, this cut garden club idea is just, it's so fun for me. I feel like people who, it's a really low in terms of like the fee. It's an annual fee and it's pretty low comparable to everything else that's out there. But it's not, I'm not burning myself out doing it. It's really manageable. And it's so fun. So having people join in, it was way more than I thought. I thought I'd maybe get 20 people. We got over 100. I think we're at 111 now across Canada, one from Montana. It's just that I would love to further develop that and see what else we can do with something like that. I don't love the exclusive nature of it, but the thing is, while a lot of people ask questions on social media, I'm farming. Like my time is so limited. My energy is so limited. I'll finally shut down, sit down with my kids, and these questions are popping up. And I feel really lucky and flattered that engagement is coming in, but it's so much work to keep on top of all of it. Yeah. So being able to create a group where my time is being valued, and I'm being kind of like, I guess, paid for my time sort of thing, makes it more sustainable for me, and the quality of the content that I'm able to provide goes way up, for everyone who's a part of the group. So I'm very excited to see where that goes. I still love doing the in-person arrangement workshops on the farm in the summer when everything's in bloom, things are green, sunny. It's so beautiful out here. And I'm putting a sunflower maze this year. I'm moving all my animals to one little spot, so when people come out to pick up their flowers or whatever on the weekend, they can kind of say hi to all the the pig and the chickens and all that stuff. So I do want to develop the farm to a modest little spot where people can sit and pick up some flowers and kind of see the place, enjoy a workshop. And otherwise I like the people element of it. I see another question.
Yes. We had a few. So one person said they love the cut garden club, that it's fantastic.
Oh, fantastic.
Another person wants to know, the summer is so small here, how do you manage to take care of the flowers? And then the other part got cut off if you want to send the rest of it. But how do you manage it with how short our summer is?
Yeah, that's tricky. When I first started, my top priority in terms of prioritizing my budget at the beginning was I wanted a high tunnel. I wanted some sort of season extender. I felt like that was a really, really key piece in being able to develop a sustainable business. I got really lucky. There's another one. Thank you. I got really lucky. I bought a farm truck from a guy in the neighboring town, this beautiful old 79 Ford dump truck. And when I went over to pick it up, he had worked on a lot of different job sites in the oil industry. And he was a bit of a hoarder. So he had all this equipment around and all these things. We got to talking. He's like, okay, so farming, hey, so like flowers, huh? Like, would you need a greenhouse? And I was like, what do you have? Like, I'm very interested. Took me around to this spot, and they were all dismantled, but he had 3.5 full, like 100-foot by 25-foot frame greenhouses, just laying there, just in piles that he had picked up at an auction. And he was going to build one for his wife, but he kind of had the others. They were just part of the package or whatever. So he agreed to bundle them in with my truck sale. So I got 2.5 greenhouse frames for a really good price. They were basically around, like, I think they were, if I price it out, they were about $1,500 for each house, which is low. It's very low. Thanks, Paul. And then I built the one, and because it's mostly just me out here, that was plenty. Like I wanted to put up the other 2.5, but I was like, I'm never gonna get to that. Like, there's no way that I can do a full acre plus almost a half acre of greenhouse. Maybe if I was at year 10, I would have enough staff to be able to manage all of that. But in the meantime, I just thought this is too much. And I sold the frames to other growers, and it felt good for me, and it worked for them too, because they got a good price on them comparably. Like most of those sorts of setups, you're looking at, 10 to 20 grand to buy. So yeah, that was, but now having that high tunnel, it's unheated. I got 2 layers of 6mm poly on the outside of it. I have to replace one of them because the hail got it a couple summers ago, but still super functional. I plant directly in the ground. So it's just a big sheltered garden that I run in there. And I do put some seedlings in there in the spring when the nighttime temps are a bit warmer. And yeah, it basically adds 3 to 4 weeks in the spring and 3 to 4 weeks in the fall. So I'm extending my season overall by about 2 months. So we go from 4 to about 6. I can start a lot more things in there. It's just, there's a lot more control in that space. The field is wonderful too. And I have new plans for the field in terms of how I want to work it. Mostly growing it for dried flowers and seeds, just so that I can let it go to full bloom. One thing people don't realize when you're growing cut flowers is that you rarely see the blooms in the gardens because you're cutting them all the time. So there's a lot of green. And as soon as you see color, you're like, dude, I gotta go cut that. That's ready to go. I gotta get it. So having a field that's just for dried flowers and for seeds makes a lot of sense. I can let them, the colors there, the visitors can come and see it. It's just more enjoyable, I think, for all of us. But yeah, the season extenders, and then I've got my grow racks set up. They're basically just in my front entrance. I'd like to expand my seed starting space in the future, but it's just something I'm slowly working towards.
Yeah. Okay, so I have one more question left for Sarah, everyone. If you have something you want to ask her, you can ask it sort of while I'm asking this question or in the next few moments before we wrap up. So the last thing I wanted to ask you was sort of related to this idea of dreaming or having dreams for things. So I asked you to send me some facts about yourself. And one of the ones that you sent me was that I bought my own farm on my own, no partner, no husband, just a gal and a dream. And so many of the things you do are these dreams that you're just going ahead and turning yourself into reality. So for people that have all these dreams, but don't feel like they have the support to sort of fulfill them, what advice do you have?
I would say there's a few things, and there's a few kind of like pieces for me that were essential. So I never had a lot of money in terms of being able to start my own business. There was one year where I had like some backed up tax returns. And that was the year where I'm like, cool, I have a little bit of money now. I'll buy a farm, obviously. I never had a lot of money, but I always kept my credit in good shape. And just from a practical financial kind of like advice level, keep your credit in good shape as you can.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a bank to start with and was rejected. But it worked because then I went to Community Futures, which is a place in High River. They're a government funded body that promotes and supports and builds up rural businesses that build innovation and kind of jobs and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the requirements for qualifying for funding through Community Futures is you have to have a formal letter of rejection from a bank. so so it worked really well. It was like, go to a bank, got the cool rejection, yes, okay, now like next I'll take my plan to Community Futures. And the credit part worked really well for that. Was they just need to see some record of, yeah, you can manage your payments, you can manage, if you don't have a lot, at least you can manage it, right? So from a financial practical standpoint, there's that. Now in terms of support, I have been lucky to have a large support network. I have, the communities that I was involved with, again, those arts and music communities, they're just the warmest, loveliest people. And I credit them a lot to building me up over the years and kind of just encouraging me to keep going, like just, you got it sort of thing. So, but it's not impossible to find those communities. And it can be scary to step into a new realm that you're unfamiliar with. Sometimes it takes a lot of humility and a lot of just kind of keeping your head down and learning and just kind of like taking your time to get to know them. But finding your support circle is really important. If you feel like you don't have a partner who's fully on board, or you don't have a partner at all, that doesn't mean you can't do it. You just kind of have to seek out where that support might be, because you'll need it. You can't go into it without that support. There's been many times where I've thought, not that I ever wanted to quit, but I was scared it wouldn't work. There's been a lot of times where I've worried, what am I doing? Oh no, Yeah. But then someone would come along and say something really lovely, or donate something, or just I'm pretty tough, and I've kind of like, charged forward in a lot of ways, and I try to stay brave, and I try to keep my guts about me and my wits about me and all of those things. But I rarely crack, but the time that I do crack is when people are genuinely kind and generous towards me, and then I'm just like, oh my God, you're so nice. But I am really lucky to have neighbors who help and showed up with their tractor or come and fill my water tank when it's dry. But it really takes kind of like this approach of just bare bones humility, like just peel it all away and come at it as this, like, I'm here to learn. I'm not going to hassle you. I'm just gonna take what whatever you're willing to offer. Accepting charity, like that's really hard for a lot of people, is accepting charity. But when you're starting something like this, especially with a farm, I've had to pare down my standard of living. I don't feel like it's gone down, but I've had to like pull my expectations way down here. Like if the water or the septic freezes up over the winter time, that's going to be a whole thing. Like I have to get into a septic tank and chip away that brown water myself. Or, there's going to be some mice around, like there's all these things that come with country living, rural living, homestead life, it's a big switch. So yeah, I guess my advice is keep good credit and find those support circles. Find the people who will build you up and encourage you and support you. And if you can find business advisors, Community Futures is also really good for this, as they have free advisory services for building your business. If you have a plan, whether or not you get the funding, they will help you build a really solid business plan. So again, when I approached this whole idea, the idea of doing a small scale flower farm, it was never I'm just going to start it as a hobby and I like the lifestyle and I want to just sell a few flowers. It was never that. It was just, this has to be a business. I need this to be sustainable. It has to support my family. That was it from the very beginning. So the business plan was really important. And that's why I ended up writing the whole book, was just because I kept seeing I kept seeing people dive into it because of the dream lifestyle aspect, and then just being devastated when it didn't work. And that's heartbreaking to see someone's dream kind of crumble, and for them the disillusionment and all the rest of it that comes in. So I thought, I'm not seeing a lot of business resources for small scale cut flower farms. So why don't I just pump out what I know, and hopefully it helps. And, so that I feel like has had a small impact at least. But yeah, having the support is really key. Having the support and being smart about it, thinking of it in terms of like, you need to know the numbers. You need to know how to do projections. You need to know can't be scared of that stuff. That goes back to the fear element, how fear can hold so many people back. Numbers can hold people back because they're scared of them, addressing a budget, looking at projections, all those things can be really scary. And the fear of failure, like looking at this, okay, there's this investment that goes into it. I don't know if that's going to pay off in the long run. Well, better not do it. Like that can hold people back. You need the plan that there you go. It does. It helps immensely for sure.
Well, I think those are all the questions I have for you today. I really appreciate all the time you took, Sarah, to share everything you know with all of us. I can't believe how many things have happened with your business, and sort of, I don't know, there's just so much good and excitement in it. I feel, like I said earlier, just a lot of anticipation and excitement to see all the things you're going to do this summer and everything like that. For those of you that are looking to connect with Sarah, I will make sure to link information on her book, her website, sort of some things on how you can be involved with more of the stuff she's doing down below. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you again soon for some more interviews together. Bye.